Jake Reynolds leaned back in his office chair, staring blankly at the screen in front of him. It had been one of those weeks, long, exhausting, and filled with the constant pressure of deadlines. As a marketing manager at a mid-sized tech firm, he was used to the stress, but lately things had felt different. The tension in his home was palpable, and it weighed heavily on his mind. His wife, Lily, had changed in ways he couldn't quite place. Once the vibrant woman he had married 5 years ago, she now seemed distant and distracted. The sparkle in her eyes had dulled, and conversations that once flowed easily between them had turned into awkward exchanges filled with silence. Jake brushed it off as the result of work-related stress, but deep down he sensed something more troubling. Lily worked in human resources, a position that required her to interact with many employees, including the charming and charismatic Tony, a new hire who had quickly become a favorite among the staff. Jake had seen the way Lily lit up when talking about him, her laughter ringing through the house, but it was a sound that now felt foreign, something that had become rare. "Hey Jake, you okay?" his colleague Sarah asked as she walked by his desk, snapping him out of his thoughts. "Yeah, just thinking," Jake replied, forcing a smile. "About work?" she probed, tilting her head slightly. "More like home stuff," he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. "Lily and we're just not connecting like we used to." "Have you talked to her about it?" Sarah suggested. Jake shrugged. "Not really. I guess I'm afraid of what I might find out." "Communication is key, you know? Maybe try a weekend getaway or something? Just the two of you?" He nodded absent-mindedly, knowing that deep down, he wasn't sure if a weekend away would change anything. As he returned to his work, his thoughts wandered to Lily again. He wondered what had shifted in their relationship, and if there was something he could do to bring back the spark. That evening, as Jake walked through the front door of their home, the familiar scent of Lily's cooking greeted him. It was comforting, but there was an underlying tension that he couldn't shake off. "Hey, love," he called out, hanging his coat on the rack. "In here." Lily's voice came from the kitchen, bright yet somewhat forced. Jake entered to find her stirring a pot on the stove, her hair tied back in a messy bun and an apron wrapped around her waist. The sight was comforting, but as he approached her, he noticed her gaze was fixed on the food, not on him. "How was your day?" Jake asked, trying to initiate a conversation. "Busy," she replied, her tone clipped. "You know how it is." Jake frowned but didn't press further. He had learned to pick his battles, and now didn't feel like the right time to confront her about their growing distance. After dinner, they settled on the couch, both glued to their phones instead of engaging with each other. Jake felt a familiar sense of frustration building inside him, but he didn't know how to voice it without sounding needy or insecure. "Lily, can we talk?" he finally said, breaking the silence. "About what?" she asked, still scrolling through her phone. "Us. I feel like we're drifting apart," Jake admitted, searching her face for any sign of understanding. "Maybe it's just a phase," she replied dismissively, her eyes never leaving the screen. "You know how life gets." He swallowed hard, realizing that she wasn't ready to have this conversation. As the night wore on, he couldn't shake the feeling of dread settling in his stomach. He wanted to believe that everything would be okay, but a nagging voice in the back of his head warned him otherwise. The next morning, Jake woke up to an empty bed. The sheets on Lily's side were still neatly made, and a quick glance at the clock told him she had left for work early. He sighed, feeling the weight of loneliness pressing down on him again. As he got ready for work, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He poured himself a cup of coffee and opened his laptop to check his emails. One from Lily caught his attention. "Hey babe, I have something I want to talk to you about later. Can we chat tonight?" His heart raced at the uncertainty of her words. Was she finally going to address the distance between them? Or was this about something else? He pushed the thoughts aside and focused on the day ahead. At work, he was buried in meetings and reports, trying to ignore the gnawing feeling in his gut. When lunchtime arrived, he decided to call Lily to check in. Hey, it's me, Jake said when she answered. Hi, I'm just taking a break, she replied, her voice brightening slightly. Got your email? What did you want to talk about? He asked, trying to sound casual. Oh, it's nothing major. Just, I've been asked to go on a weekend retreat with some of the HR team, including Tony. I wanted to get your thoughts on it, she explained. Jake's heart sank at the mention of Tony. A retreat? With him? It's just for team building, Jake, she said, a hint of irritation creeping into her voice. You know how important these things are for work. Yeah, but it's a weekend away, just you and him, he replied, trying to keep his tone steady. It's not like that. It's a professional event. You have to trust me, Lily said, her voice rising defensively. I do trust you, but no buts, Jake. This is a great opportunity for me. I'd love your support, she interrupted. He took a deep breath, trying to quell the emotions brewing inside him. Fine, go ahead. Just have fun, I guess. Thank you, I appreciate it. We'll talk more tonight, okay? She said cheerfully before hanging up. Jake set his phone down, feeling a mixture of anger and confusion. He wanted to trust her, but the thought of her spending an entire weekend with Tony filled him with jealousy. He pushed the feelings aside and focused on work, but as the hours dragged on, he couldn't shake the sense of dread that followed him. When Jake arrived home that evening, Lily was waiting for him with a bright smile, her eyes sparkling. I'm glad you're home. I have so much to tell you about the retreat, she exclaimed, wrapping her arms around him. Before we get into that, can we talk about what's been going on between us? Jake asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Can't we save that for later? I'm really excited about this opportunity, she said, pulling away to grab her notes. Jake felt his frustration bubbling up again. Lily, this is important. We can't keep avoiding it. She sighed, her expression shifting to annoyance. Jake, I don't have time for this right now. Can't you just be happy for me? This could really help my career. Is that all you care about? He shot back, feeling his temper flare. What about us? Lily crossed her arms, her smile fading. You're being unreasonable. I thought you would be supportive. I need this. Do you even realize how this looks? You're going to a retreat with a guy you're practically infatuated with, he said, his voice rising. I'm not infatuated with him, she yelled back, her face flushing with anger. You're being paranoid, Jake. It's just work. Just work? You're spending the entire weekend with him, he pressed. Lily threw her hands up in exasperation. Fine. You want to know the truth? I don't know what's wrong with us either. Maybe I do need this weekend away to figure things out. Her words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Jake felt his heart sink as he stared at her. Maybe it's not just about work, is it? He asked softly. Lily opened her mouth to respond, but then paused, her expression shifting as if she were weighing her words carefully. Maybe I just need some time away. I don't know, Jake. This is hard for me, too. The air between them grew thick with tension. Jake's mind raced, the unsettling thoughts of Lily's relationship with Tony gnawing at him. He felt helpless, like he was losing her bit by bit, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Just be careful, okay? He said, his voice barely above a whisper. Of course I will, I promise. I'll be back on Sunday, and we can talk then, she replied, her voice softer now. But Jake wasn't convinced. As he watched her prepare for the weekend, excitement radiating from her, he couldn't shake the feeling that this retreat would change everything. The following days dragged on as Jake wrestled with his feelings. Friday finally arrived, but instead of the usual excitement for the weekend, he felt a sense of impending doom. Lily had packed her bag and was practically bouncing with energy as she prepared to leave. Are you sure you're okay with this? She asked one last time, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Yeah, go have fun, Jake replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. As she left, Jake felt the silence of the house envelop him. He wandered from room to room, feeling the emptiness seep into his bones. It was hard to ignore the nagging thoughts about what Lily was doing and who she was with. That night, he tried to distract himself by catching up on work. But every time he heard a notification on his phone, his heart raced with the hope that it was a message from her. Instead, he found himself scrolling through social media, watching the world around him continue while he felt stuck in place. Hours later, he finally fell into a restless sleep, only to be jolted awake by the sound of his phone vibrating. Jake groggily checked the screen, and his heart sank as he saw Lily's name flash across. It. Having a great time. Wish you were here. He stared at the message, his mind racing with insecurities. Did she really mean that? Or was she just trying to make him feel better? He typed a response, but hesitated before hitting send, feeling an overwhelming wave of doubt wash over him. The next morning, Jake decided to go for a run to clear his head. As he pounded the pavement, he tried to shake off the images of Lily laughing and having fun with Tony, but each step only intensified the pit in his stomach. Later that day, Jake received a text from Lily again, but this time it was accompanied by a photo. She stood by a picturesque lake, her hair blowing in the wind, and a wide smile spread across her face. The sun set behind her, casting a warm glow that only seemed to highlight her beauty. Beautiful day. Wish you could see this. Jake felt a pang of jealousy. He couldn't shake the feeling that she was enjoying herself too much, and the thought of her experiencing such joy without him felt like a betrayal. He spent the rest of the day trying to keep busy, but the image of her with Tony lingered in his mind. Finally, he reached his breaking point. That night, he sent her a message. Are you having fun? A few moments later, his phone buzzed. Yes, it's amazing here. His heart raced, but a different kind of frustration bubbled to the surface. He wanted to ask her more about Tony, about what they were doing, but fear held him back. Instead, he typed back a simple response. I'm glad. But the words felt hollow, and he couldn't shake the sense of unease that settled over him like a thick fog. As the hours passed, Jake's thoughts turned darker. He found himself pacing around the living room, replaying every moment from their last conversation. Every smile she had given him felt like a lie, every laugh shared hollow. Eventually, he decided he couldn't take it anymore. He needed to confront his fears head-on. Jake grabbed his phone and called Lily, but after a few rings, it went to voicemail. His heart sank further as he left a message, trying to keep his voice steady. Hey, it's me. Just wanted to check in. Hope you're having a good time. Call me back when you can. With that, he felt a mix of relief and anxiety wash over him. He spent the rest of the evening tossing and turning, the thought of Lily with Tony invading his dreams. When he finally drifted into a restless sleep, the lines between reality and his worst fears blurred, and he couldn't escape the sense of betrayal looming over him. Jake awoke the next morning to the sound of his phone buzzing. He rubbed his eyes and reached for it, only to find a text from Lily. Sorry I didn't call back. Last night was incredible. We had a campfire and everything. Jake's heart raced, but the excitement in her message felt bittersweet. He typed back a quick response. Sounds fun. What did you do? A few moments later, his phone buzzed again. We made s'mores, played some games. It was great bonding time with the team. Jake couldn't help but feel a wave of bitterness wash over him. Bonding time. The phrase echoed in his mind, taking on a life of its own as he imagined the group laughing together. And Tony? He typed, the words slipping out before he could stop himself. The response came almost instantly. He's really funny, but it's just all professional, I promise. Jake stared at the screen, feeling the anger boiling inside him. Are you sure? Jake, please don't make this about us. I'm just trying to have a good time. He set his phone down, feeling a mix of frustration and hurt. He didn't want to be the jealous husband, but how could he not be? Every message felt like a stab to his heart, and the anxiety of their growing distance consumed him. That afternoon, he found himself at a bar with Sarah, seeking solace in a drink in the company of a friend. As they chatted, he vented about his frustrations, the feelings of helplessness washing over him. Do you think I'm overreacting? Jake asked, swirling the ice in his glass. Honestly, Jake, it sounds like you're worried for a reason. If it were me, I'd be concerned too, Sarah replied, her tone serious. Jake nodded, taking a deep breath. I want to trust her, but it feels like she's slipping away. Have you thought about talking to her about it directly? Maybe confronting your insecurities? She suggested. He frowned, unsure if he could face that conversation. What if she gets defensive? What if it pushes her further away? Better to face it head on than let it fester, don't you think? Sarah encouraged. Jake sighed, contemplating her words. Yeah, maybe you're right. As the hours passed and the drinks flowed, he found some comfort in the idea of finally confronting Lily about his fears. Perhaps it was time to put everything on the table,